What if the greatest secret Freddie Mercury ever kept wasn't about his fame, his fortune, or even his illness, but about how he truly lived when the spotlight switched off? For decades, the gates of Garden Lodge stood closed. Ivy climbed its brick walls. Curtains stayed drawn. The world knew what happened on stage, stadiums shaking under the power of Queen, thousands chanting lyrics in unison. But almost no one knew what happened inside that quiet London home. And when those doors were finally opened, what the world found wasn't scandal. It was intimacy. It was tenderness. It was a man. When visitors first stepped into Garden Lodge, they expected drama. They expected gold records stacked like trophies. They expected outrageous costumes thrown over velvet chairs. They expected the excess of a rock god who once wore a crown and cloak before roaring through, "We are the champions." Instead, they were met with stillness. The rooms felt curated, not chaotic. Carefully arranged art, soft lighting, porcelain displayed with almost reverent precision. The atmosphere wasn't loud, it was thoughtful. It felt less like the mansion of a global icon and more like the private world of someone who valued beauty in silence. And that was the first revelation. Freddie Mercury, the unstoppable frontman of Queen, had built a sanctuary, not a shrine to fame, but a refuge from it. Among the most astonishing discoveries were his handwritten lyrics. Pages of drafts for Bohemian Rhapsody, covered in edits, arrows, scratched out lines. You could see the song evolving in real time. The mythology of genius dissolved into something far more powerful. Discipline. Doubt. Revision. One early draft contained a line that never made it into the final version. "Mama, there's a war outside." A haunting glimpse into a direction the song almost took. It reminded everyone of something profound. Even legends second-guess themselves. Even legends start again. But it wasn't only the music manuscripts that struck visitors. In drawers and boxes were bundles of fan letters, carefully preserved. Some unopened, some worn at the edges. Teenagers thanking him for making them feel less alone. Adults writing about grief, heartbreak, illness, and how Queen's music helped them survive it. He had kept them. That simple act changed everything. Whether he read every word or not, he valued the connection enough not to throw them away. It suggested something deeply human. He understood what he meant to people. Then there were the Polaroids. Not glamorous publicity stills. Not red carpet poses. These were private moments. Freddie laughing with friends in silk robes. Feeding his cats. Sitting at a piano in the dim glow of a lamp. No performance. No armor. One image from 1987 showed him alone at the piano, shoulders slightly slumped. The same year he was diagnosed with AIDS. There was no theatrical defiance in the frame, just quiet focus. A man still creating, even as his world narrowed. The photographs didn't scream tragedy. They whispered courage. Near his bedside stood two framed photos that told their own story. One of Mary Austin, the woman he once called the love of his life. Another of Jim Hutton, his partner during his final years. They sat side by side. It was a silent acknowledgement of complexity, of love that defied categories, of a heart big enough to hold more than one truth. Freddie's home didn't erase contradiction. It embraced it. Even his daily to-do lists felt moving. Call Mum. Order flowers. Pick up Japanese print. Simple reminders that collapse the myth into something relatable. The strutting icon in white tank top and microphone stand became a son, a collector, a man managing errands before dinner. Perhaps the most emotional discovery came from a stack of unsent notes found near his writing desk. Some were addressed to friends. Others were simply reflections. One read, "If you're reading this, it means I didn't get to say it in person. Don't more me with silence. Turn the volume up." There was no grand farewell press conference. No dramatic final speech, just ink on paper, waiting quietly in the dark. For someone who commanded stadiums, his private world was astonishingly serene. One of the greatest surprises was his deep devotion to Japanese art and antiques. Hundreds of pieces filled the house, woodblock prints, lacquerware, silk kimonos, delicate porcelain. It wasn't casual collecting. It was studied. Intentional. Auction experts from Sotheby's later described the collection as museum quality. Freddie hadn't chased trends. He'd followed instinct. He once said he was drawn to the balance and mystery of Japanese art. Walking through Garden Lodge felt like stepping into a Kyoto gallery rather than a rock star's estate. And then there were the cats. Freddie Mercury adored cats with an intensity that bordered on devotion. At one point, he shared his home with 10 of them. Each had toys, designated spaces, even portraits in ornate frames. One wall displayed a gallery of feline photographs, tiny sweaters, painted dishes with their names, birthday cards written to them. He wrote the song Delilah for one of his beloved companions. The lyrics were playful and affectionate, but inside Garden Lodge, that affection took physical form. These weren't eccentric indulgences. They were emotional anchors. During his illness, when visitors became fewer and privacy tightened, the cats remained. Loyal, constant. Freddie's flamboyant stage persona still had a place in the house, his custom crown and velvet robe carefully preserved, stage jackets folded with care. But even those iconic pieces were displayed like relics of art, not ego. The house told a story through objects. Every room felt like a chapter, some loud, some quiet. Together, they painted a portrait no biography fully captured. Then came the decision that would shake fans worldwide. After Freddie's death in 1991, Mary Austin inherited Garden Lodge and its contents. For more than 30 years, she kept everything untouched. The house became a sealed time capsule. But in 2023, she chose to release it. When Sotheby's announced the auction, reactions were immediate. Shock, curiosity, grief. The exhibition drew global crowds. Visitors stood inches away from the Yamaha Baby grand piano on which he composed countless hits. They saw original lyrics to We Are the Champions. They examined his stage costumes, his tea sets, even his mustache comb. Then the bidding began. The piano sold for £1.7 million. The crown and robe fetched over £600,000. A small silver Tiffany mustache comb reached more than £150,000. Handwritten lyrics sold for sums that stunned even seasoned collectors. Records were shattered, but so were hearts. Some fans felt as though they were watching pieces of Freddie's soul being scattered. Others saw it as a final act of generosity, sharing what had once been hidden. Mary Austin explained that she didn't want to leave the responsibility to someone else. It was time, she said, to pass the legacy on. And so the objects traveled to museums, to collectors, to private homes across continents. There was tension in that dispersal. Context dissolved as items separated. Yet something else happened, too. Freddie's story began to live in new spaces. A Japanese fan purchased a ukiyo-e print and pledged to display it publicly. A philanthropist bought one of his stage jackets to tour through schools and LGBTQ+ centers. Devotees who had grown up feeling unseen now held tangible pieces of the man who had made them feel powerful. Because beyond the auction headlines, something deeper was revealed. Freddie Mercury was born Farrokh Bulsara in Zanzibar to Parsi Indian parents. He grew up navigating cultural borders, Africa, India, England. He reinvented himself. Yes, but he never erased his roots. Persian rugs and Hindu figurines in Garden Lodge quietly reflected that layered identity. He lived during a time when being openly queer could end careers. He blurred masculinity and femininity on stage, but guarded his private life fiercely. The AIDS crisis cast a shadow over his final years. He publicly confirmed his diagnosis only one day before his death. Inside Garden Lodge, however, history breathed differently. Hidden letters from partners, candid photographs, personal reflections. They weren't tabloid revelations. They were evidence of a life lived fully even when the world demanded silence. Historians began recognizing the cultural significance of the collection. Not just memorabilia, but artifacts of a queer immigrant artist in late 20th century Britain. A rare and intimate archive. Freddie once declared, "I won't be a rock star. I will be a legend." He achieved both. But the objects in his home revealed how that legend was constructed, not just with spectacle, but with solitude. The public myth was thunderous. The private man was meticulous. Fans who visited the exhibition described it as a pilgrimage. Some wept openly before his piano. Others stood silently in front of handwritten lyrics, as if in prayer. Online, millions shared reflections. How Queen's music helped them come out, survive bullying, endure grief. The myth didn't crumble when the house opened. It deepened. Before the auction, Freddie's legacy lived primarily in performances and records. Afterward, it expanded into the domestic, a recipe in his handwriting, a pair of worn slippers, an address book. These simple items collapsed the distance between icon and admirer. He wasn't just the voice that shook Wembley. He was the man who poured tea in the evening, who wrote birthday cards to his cats, who arranged porcelain with scholarly care. Debate continues over whether selling the collection was right. Should everything have remained intact, like Graceland, or was sharing it an act of trust? There is no simple answer. What remains undeniable is this: Opening Garden Lodge allowed the world to meet Freddie Mercury again, not as a caricature of glam rock, but as a human being layered with contradiction. He was flamboyant and restrained, bold and private, vulnerable and commanding. And that complexity is why he endures. The auction may have scattered his belongings across the globe, but it also scattered seeds of connection. A teacup here, a lyric sheet there, a painting, a jacket, a book. Each piece now carries a fragment of his story into new hands. Freddie Mercury didn't just leave behind music. He left behind evidence of how to live vividly, how to surround yourself with beauty, how to love deeply, even when the world is watching. When the doors of Garden Lodge opened, the shock wasn't scandal. It was humanity. Behind the glitter stood a man who treasured quiet art, who preserved fan letters, who balanced cultural identities with pride, who faced mortality with ink and melody. The world once saw only the superstar. Now it has seen the person. And somehow, that has made the legend even larger. Because perhaps the greatest performance Freddie Mercury ever gave wasn't under stadium lights, but in the careful, beautiful, fiercely private life he built when no one was looking. And now that we've stepped inside it, we understand something profound. Legends are not born in applause. They are built in silence. They are sustained by love, and they live on not just in music, but in every fragile human detail left behind.